Welcome to Tibalt's Apprentice. This is 5 tips for better commander play part 2. We already did one of these, and this is the long version of part 2. So, number 1. First, define the commander that you're playing. Are you playing a commander or a non-commander deck? The definition being, every deck I try to build is a non-commander deck. It should have some way of winning without having your commander on the board. Take a few minutes before you sit down, before you even go to play, to look at that and decide whether this is a commander deck where it has to be on the field or a non-commander deck. One of the reasons that you're doing this is I never want my opponents to be in charge of whether I win or not. If I am playing a commander deck, I always want to add some non-commander ways of winning in the deck, even if I have to go for an infinite combo of some sort, just because I don't want people to remove my commander and be able to take me out of the game. Number 2 is define your opening hand. So the way I'm doing this is by building the perfect hand of 7 cards, what I would like to draw, and doing that as many times as I possibly can. The advice given in episode 504 of Game Nights was to build your best hand and then step it down a little bit. My cards aren't that far off from each other, since I generally am playing budget decks or budget-friendly decks, with some exceptions. So the power disparity between cards isn't that great. So for me, I took this in a different direction and simply built as many possible great opening hands as I could with a single deck. This may be another breakout video where I take a specific deck and look at those cards and how I do that. Maybe there's no call for that. But what I do is I build every hand that I can, a perfect hand if you will, and it also gets me in the habit now of looking for the cards or card openings that will be acceptable, so I will know what to mulligan to later. Kind of a dual purpose thing there. What I want to have in my hand, opening hand, is ramp, protection, and or gas to keep going. So whether that's ramp or synergy, whatever it is, those are the cards that I want to have in my opening hand. And I was surprised how many of my decks were deficient in that. I didn't have any kind of ramp. Some cards are better for that. Green obviously is going to have the best ramp available. White and black, not so much. So you may find yourself needing to rely on or replace other cards in your deck to always have some ramp in your opening hand or close to it. Remember, as far as I'm concerned, scrying is a maybe not an adequate substitute, but something else that gets you through your deck faster is acceptable in those positions. That's just me, but this is just number 2 for having a better game, I think, is looking for those pieces in the deck. So I built as many perfect hands as I can with the deck. For example, my Ghoul Caller Gisa, I was able to eke out at least 9 great opening hands, not using duplicate cards. I was able to separate out 9 different hands that were absolutely 100% acceptable to start with and perpetuate me into the mid-game. Number 3 is to recognize your win conditions or how you're going to win the game. However many win conditions you have in there, add more. I can almost guarantee that you don't have enough. There's going to be 1 or 2 win conditions, sometimes 3, and people don't really seem to think about that. Or at least I'm judging by myself and I know win consideration wasn't really there. I just bought a pre-con deck and thought, well, this will work. Or I relied on somebody else's recipe, somebody else's brew, and thought, well, I'm going to tweak this and this or whatever, but never really giving thought to that before I sat down at the table. And again, all of this preparation is before you sit down at the table. I really do think it makes a difference. So looking at that, think about simple win conditions. For example, several games recently I've won simply because I had flyers. So build that into your win condition, make a win condition about that. Think that evasion is pretty powerful when it comes down to it, depending on what that deck does. A lot of these things are situational, they're going to be up to you. Adding a couple of win conditions that are 100% independent of your commander will let you have a better game session overall. Fourth is consider the mid-game momentum of your deck. So think about how you're going to prevent yourself from being in a simply top decking, after turn 4 or 5, after your initial play every card that you have. Do you suddenly find yourself stalling out if somebody has wiped your board a couple of times? Think about that as you're building the deck, as you're looking at the deck. You're most vulnerable when you're top decking, because anybody sitting there with a counter spell simply knows to look at your face if you don't have a poker face, and if you tell them by the gasp of relief when you pick that card up, they know just counter that spell or destroy that thing. If there's a combo piece you already have on the board and you exclaim, "Oh my gosh, at last," well, chances are if they're a good player, they're going to pick off that piece that you have. So you need to build things into your deck that are going to give you momentum. I thought about a few cards to put up here, but more than anything else, it's going to be card draw. And I don't know what deck you're playing, but think about that. Keep that in mind as you build your deck and as you look at your deck before you sit down to play. What do I have in my deck for mid-game momentum when I stall out? Number 5, have fun with a game. Seems like kind of generic advice, just kind of random, but it's not. There are so many other things these days about Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast that could bring you down. So I want my games when I sit down with others to be fun, and I want to remind myself of that before I go into this. So my advice, number 5, have fun with the game. When you're there, remember that it's a game, and take the other 4 principles and look at other people's decks as you're playing, if you're comfortable enough with your deck. Maybe you're going to try to apply these lessons. Apply them one at a time if you can. Don't try to mash all of this up into one single play session, but try, if you're lucky enough, to do it over multiple sessions. I know a lot of times people don't have the resources as far as game stores or hobby stores. You may get out once a month and might be getting around the kitchen table with the guys, and you get so excited with playing that you forget to take your time and just enjoy the game. So that's my advice. So many times I've guilty of this myself, and I watch other players just draw until they get a 3-land hand and are ready to go. Use the advantage of the mulligan to your advantage by doing more than just pulling out a 3-land hand. Going back to number 2, if you've chosen a hand, you're going to recognize it better, easier, faster that way. If you know you have those cards in the deck for your mid-game, you're going to feel a little bit easier about taking a mulligan. Again, now I've gone back and made this about the mulligan. These are things that are supposed to help you play a more better and efficient game. It's really for you to have to not have a non-game of Magic. I think I covered everything here. I don't want to go on too long because I'm going to sound like a broken record. But most importantly, have fun playing Magic. And thanks for taking the time to listen to me babble.